welcome to this special edition of Bill Hitchcock Live on COVID-19. We're going to be talking about mask and transmission facts, all things which are done by research and nothing else. We're going to be talking about, hi there. We're going to be talking about a lot of things from research that has been done around the world. It's through organizations from like the New England Journal of Medicine. There are organizations in China. There were studies done in Denmark. There were studies done by the University of Minnesota. There's studies done by the CDC. And this information really has not been gotten out to us, to the general public. Really what has happened, and one of the things that I have found most disturbing, and one of the reasons, the motivation for today, is that the government and the media will tell us what to do, but don't really tell us why. This is no cause. We get an effect, but no cause. They tell us to do certain things, the lockdowns, the mask, do this, stay home, don't work, all these things, but they're not telling us the science, the research that's backing up what they're saying. The other thing which we're going to be talking about a lot here at the very beginning is confusion. At the very beginning of the COVID outbreak, it was wear a mask, don't wear a mask, wear a mask. Wait a minute, we changed our mind. And so what's the general public to do when the federal government is flip-flopping on us and we're getting news reports from the media that tell different stories? So no wonder the general public, self-included, became highly suspicious of what is truly going on. And by the way, let me go on and get this up here before I forget. I'm not really planning on taking too many calls today, but if you want to give me a call, 252-648-0474. That's area code 252-648-0474. If you have a question or a comment on anything that we're about to talk about, the live chat is set up at YouTube. I ask you to go to YouTube and to participate in the chat. You have to go chat. You have to sign into your YouTube channel, your own personal thing at YouTube to be able to do that, and also to hit like and subscribe to my YouTube channel that you're going to. And I would say YouTube, like whatever, YouTube. So there. To start off with, this is what I want to do. Is I want to get into the confusion aspect that we have all been privy to. I'm just going to jump right on into it. Last February, the U.S. Surgeon General said, look at this. This is a tweet of his. He's talking about masks. They are not effective in preventing general public from catching coronavirus. But if healthcare providers can't get them to care for the sick patients, it puts them and our communities at risk. Now, this is last February of this year, 2020. He follows that up with saying the best way to protect yourself and your community is with everyday preventative actions like staying home when you're sick and washing hands with soap and water to help slow the spread of respiratory illness. Well, that's true. But look at that, his math about masks. They are not effective. This is the U.S. Surgeon General talking to us. So, all right, that was in February of this year. But then it was followed up with in April 3rd, just 4 or 5 weeks after he made that comment about don't wear a mask, the Surgeon General flip-flopped and said, in light of new evidence, the CDC recommends and the task force recommends wearing cloth face coverings in public settings where other social distancing measures are difficult to maintain. So that began our suspicion. February, U.S. Surgeon General says, don't wear a mask. April 3rd, he says, wear a mask. So what are we in the general public supposed to think? Well, the plot thickens in terms of contradictory information that is out there. And by the way, I bet I don't have that slate up. I have, of all the research that we're going to be going over today from around the world, and again, excuse me, this is peer-reviewed research. This isn't Bob's used car lot and his testing kit. This is legitimate research, peer-reviewed research from around the world. If you go to BillHitchcockLive.com, BillHitchcockLive.com, all of my notes all of the links, all of the survey information, all of the trials that have been tested and reviewed, you can access there in the blog session. So go to billhitchcocklive.com, then go to the blog section. It's at the very, very top where you can access all of this information that we're talking about today. Now, the confusion gets even better. Here's a study that just came out today. Doing this live is November 30th. This study came out November 18th, so less than 2 weeks ago. This study that I'm about to show you came out. It's called the Danish mask study. And basically what happened is over a 30-day period, they took over 6,000 participants. Half of them wore masks, half of them did not wear masks. The people who wore a mask were asked to change it every 8 hours. At the end of the 30-day trial, the people that wore masks, 1.8% of them caught COVID. The people who did not wear a mask, 2.1% of them caught COVID. Statistically, that's almost nothing. So this research just came out. It was by the Annals of Internal Medicine publication of the American College of Physicians. That's a legitimate organization. This just came out November 18th. The Spectator had a headline, "Landmark Danish Study Shows Face Masks Have No Significant Effect." Okay, so now we hear that. Let's take this a step further. About 5 days after that, the governor of North Carolina, Governor Roy Cooper, "The science is clear. Wearing a mask saves lives." And he posts this, this is on Facebook, about masks and how they work. "The science is settled." It was from an NPR study. So that came out November 23rd. Now, let's just kind of take a breather here real quick. Who are we to believe? Legitimate study done in Denmark with 6,000 people over a 30-day period. Half wore masks, half didn't. The people who wore masks, 1.8% got sick. The people who didn't wear masks, 2.1% got sick. Statistically, almost no difference. And then the governor of North Carolina comes out a couple days later with his own research saying masks work. Oddly enough, the governor of North Carolina about 2 days later enacted much more stricter rules and regulations and mandates here in the state of North Carolina in regards to lockdown, shut down, shut up, and go aways. It's ridiculous. But here, let's add one more variable to this all. I hope. Well, I don't have it. Well, I'll just go read it to you. It came out in the Sentinel in Kansas. That it's a data obtained in an open records request from the Kansas. And by the way, the study that the governor of North Carolina was saying was wonderful was a study done in Kansas. The Sentinel newspaper reported a couple of months prior that data obtained in an open records request from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment shows that the department just didn't manipulate data to justify a mask mandate. They also hid data showing that counties with mask mandates had a large increase in cases before tapering off. So what are we to do? Studies, legitimate organizations, news organizations, government agencies conflicting each other within days. Mere days of each other, they're contradicting each other. Now, I'm going to throw out a supposition that if you wanted to do something, you would pick and choose your science. I'm asking the general public to go look. Anything anybody says, self included, go research it. And that, by the way, again, go to billhitchcocklive.com. Everything that I'm talking about will be posted there with the links, with the sources. And in fact, I'm just skimming all the stuff that I have here because I simply don't have time and I don't want to bore your wheels off with all the things that we have to talk about. Now, speaking of boring your wheels off, little science portion of the show, but this is most important. If we just grab a hold of these few little items here that we're about to talk about fomites, the funk, then we can better educate ourselves in regards to our mask, in terms of washing our hands, in terms of understanding surfaces that that the COVID is sticking to. And these are things that we'll be talking about here a little later on, like the effectiveness of the various different types of masks. You're going to be very, very surprised what does and does not work as well as you think. But let me get into the fomites. This is what's really important. There's two types of what they call fomites. Well, let me come back here. Hang on a second. Fomites, visual aids, are the droplets that we expel. The phlegm, when we sneeze, when we cough, when we talk. This is the stuff that we expel. And they basically come in two different sizes that we'll be talking about today. Let me go back into this. And yes, I'm doing all the little switching and changing all by myself live. This is not done in an edit like a sane person would do. Two types of fomites, the droplets, which are 5 microns or greater, and what's known as aerosols, which is 5 microns or less. The COVID-19 fomite is 0.125 microns. And just for a point of reference, a micron is 1/millionth of a meter or 1/25,000th of an inch. A human hair is 50 to 70 microns. Dust is 25 microns. Red blood cell is 2 microns. So let's get back into show and tell. This would be the droplet. This would be what they call the aerosol. Now, the thing about the droplet, as the name implies, it has a greater potential to drop. So when it is expelled, let's switch over to this camera. There we go. When a droplet is expelled, it's not going to go as far before it goes down to the ground. And we're going to talk about the distances of these fomites, of the droplet, and now the aerosol. It's smaller, and when it's spoken or sneezed, it's going to go farther and stay in the air longer. Here's one other thing to keep in mind, though. These droplets, the fomite is like a diseased mucus. It's got the virus in it. So let's switch back over to here. Can you see this? This is my little example of a aerosol, but inside of it is the coronavirus. It's important to understand that, to realize that. There we go. So let's get into some of the other aspects of these aerosols and these droplets. Steve Probst. This is a smart guy. Oh, by the way, let me switch this back. Small aerosol droplets can remain in the air for at least 3 hours and travel long distances, up to 27 feet. And that comes from the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, University of Minnesota Infectious Diseases. So, and we're going to find out that they actually, in perfect environments, they can stay, these aerosol fomites can stay in the air much longer. But there is a solution to all of this. We don't have to worry about going in the room and go, no, I'm going to get the funk on me. There are things that we can do. Now, Steve Probst, let me get his part of the picture back up. He's from Texas. Steve Probst is a professional engineer from Texas, has worked in the air quality consulting industry for 30 years. He brings up, this study that he did is highly technical, very informative, and it would take me 5 hours to go through it all, but there was a couple of things that I found extremely fascinating that Steve Probst said. He says, each particle size has different risk reduction measures. The application of the 6 feet guidance has zero benefit for particles containing the coronavirus with the greatest deposition rates in the alveoli, that's the tiny air sacs, of the lungs. He said the particles greatest concern generated from a human are particles between 0.068 and 7 microns. Now, the point that he is making is this, that the 6 feet rule, because there are different sized aerosols and conditions can be different, that 6 feet is not magical. Things don't just fall off at 6 feet. So just keep that in mind when you're out and about. It also says that the coronavirus particles will remain in the air for days in an enclosed space unless the particles are removed by ventilation. Key word right there, ventilation, and we're going to be talking about that here. Well, how about this? Let's talk about it right now. The miracle of just simple ventilation of your house. The Lancet, which is an international weekly general medical journal, was founded almost 200 years ago, recently reported that the best ventilated room, after 30 seconds, the number of droplets had halved. Whereas with no ventilation, this took about 5 minutes. It goes on to say that even the opening of an entrance door and a small window can dilute the number of small droplets to 1/2 after 30 seconds. So this is very important for several reasons. One, you see all those doors open. Every home, by the way, if you have central heating and air, it is designed to not only just blow stuff out of the vents, but it also sucks stuff back up. So it's got a continuous flow. Always have all your doors open for proper ventilation. That's just for normal heating and air. Ask any heat and air guy. They leave your house, not your house open, but your doors open inside. So the proper ventilation, it's a big circle, can occur. We just learned here that if you just keep the interior doors open and with proper ventilation just floating on through your house, that the droplets in your house will halve in 30 seconds. So don't get locked up in a room, and we're going to talk about this shortly, like in a bedroom with a sick person or in a living room with the doors closed with a sick person, because you're just causing your chances to shoot up, to skyrocket. Now, here's something else that I found extremely fascinating. Would you believe that the weather has a great impact on the coronavirus? And it's not what we might think. Weather and COVID-19, wonderful research done by an organization called Aerosol and Air Quality Research, which is an independently run nonprofit. What they have discovered says weather factors play an important role at the early stages of COVID-19. Negative anomaly of UV radiation is intimately associated with COVID-19. Now I'm going to get away from this graphic, by the way. They say that negative anomaly of UV radiation is intimately associated with COVID-19. What that means, the negative anomaly of UV radiation from the sun, we know ultraviolet rays come from the sun. When you're in abnormally low levels for a period of time, that's what they mean by negative anomaly of UV radiation is intimately associated with COVID-19. Also, warmer weather plus low UV radiation favors the virus environmental survival. This They suggested the study of weather patterns is important to the prediction of future outbreaks. So can you imagine your weatherman, you're watching or the Weather Channel, and with a partly sunny and cloudy, and COVID, 19% chance of, getting COVID virus reports from your weatherman. But there's more aspects that I want to bring up. Humidity. This one had me baffled at first. The viral pathogen-carrying droplets were inactivated within shorter and shorter times as ambient humidity was increased. Dryness drives the small aerosol particles. Now, normally, I don't know about you, I would associate a virus with humidity, but it's not that. That's why during the wintertime, it is much easier to catch any type of influenza type of virus. Humidity affects both the evaporation and particle growth. In dry indoor places, less humidity, that's 40% relative humidity or less, the chances of airborne transmission of COVID are higher than that of humid places, which is up to 90% relative humidity. Based on earlier studies, a relative humidity of 40 to 60% was found to be optimal for human health in indoor places. Thus, it's extremely important to set a minimal relative humidity standard for indoor environments such as hospitals, offices, and public transportations. Now, the higher the humidity, the lower the the COVID chances in the air. The drier it is, it's easier for it to travel through. So do you remember, I remember as a kid that when it got a cold or a flu, mom would get a humidifier, not a dehumidifier, this thing that just shot out steam. Well, that's a good thing in regards to fighting off COVID. Now, as the study says, the optimal relative humidity is in between 40 and 60%. That's for general health. But I don't know, maybe during, and this is just me talking now, that maybe during these times, that just go on and get you a humidifier. Just get the steam into your house. Something else I want to talk about. There was a study that the Center for Disease Control did. Oh, this is my favorite one. This is telling. The Center for Disease Control did a study. They said they tested surface and air samples from the intensive care unit, the ICU unit, and a general COVID-19 ward at Huishanshan Hospital in Wuhan, China. They literally went to ground zero. They went to Wuhan, China, the Huishanshan Hospital, to an ICU ward. This ICU ward is COVID victims. You can't get in a worse environment than that. The next thing after that, we know what that is, and that's burying you 6 feet into the ground. So they went to the ICU unit, and they went to general ward, and they tested things. They wanted to see what was having COVID on it. They found, like in the ICU, 75% of the computer mouses had COVID. Trash cans, 60% of the trash cans did. Now let's move out of that. Miscellaneous objects that they tested at the hospital to see if it had COVID. They 81 on average, 81% of all of these items had tested positive. Exercise equipment, medical equipment, PCs and iPads, reading glasses, cell phones. Can you imagine that? Now again, we're talking about ICU and general ward hospital where COVID is ground zero. Your cell phone, COVID. Or your computer mouse, tables, room surfaces, window ledges. This is what I found most fascinating. They found that plastic would have COVID on it for up to 2 to 3 days afterwards, after exposure. Stainless steel, 2 to 3 days. Cardboard, 1 day. Copper for 4 hours. So certain surfaces maintain COVID for shorter or longer periods of time. Now this is what I think is the most fascinating. What they discovered. Droplets fall to the floor. Gravity causes droplets to fall to the floor. Half of ICU workers all had virus on the bottoms of their shoes. The rate of positivity was relatively high for floor swath samples. Intensive care unit had 70%, general ward 15%, and as I just said, half of the ICU workers. But wait, there's more. The rate of positivity was high in the floor samples because of gravity and airflow, causing most virus droplets to float to the ground. In addition, as medical staff walked around the ward, the virus can be tracked all over the floor, as indicated by the 100% rate of positivity from the floor in the pharmacy where there were no patients. Your shoes. They tested the pharmacy floor where there were no patients, and it tested 100%. So you can see the problem with on your shoes. If it got on top of your shoes and you go down there and tie your shoes, now you got the stuff on your hands, and you go touching your face or touching somebody else, and then you have a real problem. Again, I can't stress, though, that this was done by the CDC in China in an COVID ICU and also COVID general ward. So this is an extreme environment, the most extreme environment you can be in. This is not indicative of somebody's house necessarily, but it does show that COVID sticks to various and different things and can be transported on various and different things, particularly your feet. You might want to, if you think about your feet, think about the floor. If the droplets are going short distances, it's dropping to the floor. It's not just going away. It doesn't just magically disappear. It's got to go somewhere. Maybe it's going to the tabletop surfaces, to the floor. So your feet, think in terms of your shoes and your feet. Now, another item of great controversy, we just got done with Thanksgiving. And certain government agencies and certain media were telling you, don't go home for Thanksgiving, don't have large meetings. There were places all across the country where they had turkey police, I'll call them that, where you couldn't do, and they don't want you to go home and associate with people. Let's talk about the talking distance. This is a study that was done in Singapore. Staying in the same bedroom. Well, they tested this. Well, before we get into the facts, this study comes from Singapore. This was reported, again, a lot of these things, the CDC republishes these reports. This as well, it was called SARS-CoV-2 and transmission risk for factors among high-risk close contacts, a retrospective cohort study. 7,700 close contacts in Singapore were studied by the Ministry of Health. They diagnosed COVID-19 cases, so they found people had come in contact, 7,700 of them, with someone who was sick with COVID. Interestingly, it was 1,800 household contacts, 2,300 work contacts, and 3,500 social contacts. So the least amount of contact was at home, next was work, and then the large majority of these contacts were out in social contacts, what they call. 188 people got sick. Again, that's a very small percentage out of 7,700. But this is what they found. Let's get back into my wonderful little artwork here. Staying in household contact, people who got sick, sharing a bedroom and being spoken to by an index case or a sick person for 30 minutes or longer were associated with COVID transmission among household contacts. Among non-household contacts, exposure to more than one case. Let me stop right there, because I don't want to breeze past this. Exposure to more than one case. The people that got sick, they would say one or more than one, that means two or more, were in direct contact with someone who had COVID. Now, whether it was systematic or asymptomatic, I don't know. Systematic means you're showing symptoms. You're coughing, you're sneezing, watery eyes, all that kind of thing. And asymptomatic, you're not showing anything. And which, by the way, was one of the reasons why so much doubt was created at the first of 2020 after the Surgeon General said, don't wear a mask. And then 5 weeks later, he says, do wear a mask. And then they followed that up shortly afterwards with, oh, by the way, you can be sick and not know it. Talk about, raising an eyebrow or two on the legitimacy of COVID after those two episodes that were on the outset of COVID-19 outbreak. Sickness. I don't like using that word outbreak or pandemic. That's being peddled too much, which means it's not being understood by the people now hearing it and regurgitating what they hear. So let's get back into this graphic. So non-household contacts, the exposure to more than one case, being spoken to by a sick person for 30 minutes or longer, and sharing a vehicle with a sick person were associated with COVID transmission. Among both household and non-household contacts, indirect contact, meal sharing, lavatory co-usage were not independently associated with SARS-CoV-2 transmission. I like that one about sharing a vehicle with a sick person, and you have to speak to more than one sick person before they got sick. Again, out of 7,700 people who had close contact with someone who had COVID, only 100, this is in Singapore, only 188, so I guess that's what, 2.4% got sick, which strangely enough relates to that Danish study. If you average out that Danish study, it's around 1.92%. got sick, whether you're wearing a mask or not. Here in Singapore, we're coming close to that same number again with 2.4%. Interesting. So the New England Journal of Medicine, I don't have a party graphic for this one, so I'll just read it. Again, go to BillHitchcockLive.com. Everything that I'm talking about with the links to all the sources that I'm referencing and more is there. BillHitchcockLive.com. Go to the blog section. You'll see this COVID-19 special logo there at the very beginning, and you can grab a hold of all this information that I've got here and then some. But listen to what the New England Journal of Medicine said. We know that wearing a mask outside of healthcare facilities offers little, if any, protection from infection. Let me read that again. We know that wearing a mask outside of healthcare facilities offers little, if any, protection from infection. Public health authorities define a significant exposure to COVID-19 as face-to-face contact within 6 feet. Actually, you'll find a lot of studies are 1 meter. The CDC just doubled it for safety's sake. Don't blame them. Face-to-face contact within 6 feet with a patient with systematic COVID-19 displaying systematic problems. That means that they're that is sustained at least a few minutes, some say 10 minutes or even 30 minutes. The chance of catching COVID-19 from a passing interaction in a public space is therefore minimal. Now, there's a page 2 to this, but all that came from the New England Journal of Medicine. That is no slouch organization. So this fear of going out and about is evidently minimal. And they're talking about somebody that's symptomatic, not systematic, symptomatic. These are people that are actually coughing and sneezing and hacking and crying and tearing and all that kind of stuff. But here's the page 2 that we need to really pay attention to. And the New England Journal of Medicine came out later after they came out with this to stress this back half. It says a growing body of research shows that the risk of COVID transmission is strongly correlated with the duration and intensity of contact. The risk of transmission among household members can be as high as 40%, whereas the risk of transmission from less intense and less sustained encounters is below 5%. One of the things that you'll hear over and over again in these research is that people are getting sick at home. Now, I don't have this one here, but I remember reading some research from the CDC. It came out September 2020, where 75% of the people, they did a control study and a control group and another group where they gave masks. They wore masks for at least 2 weeks before they got sick. They wore the mask every single time they were out in public. Of the people that got sick, it was 75% of them got sick, and of the ones that got sick, it was because they were in close contact with at least with somebody who was sick, with at least 2 different people. They were in close contact. That means within 6 feet with at least 2 different people that had COVID during that time period. And of those people, half of those folks were at home. So I want you to think about this quarantining, locking downing at home. Guess where you're getting sick? Home. All right. Now here's something else. I love this. This was done in Singapore. Study of correct use of masks. They found out, they observed 714 men and women of all ages. They observed to see how they put on their mask. What they found out is only 12.6% put on a mask properly. They found that 75% performed strap placement incorrectly, 61% left a visible gap between the mask and skin, and about 60% didn't tighten the nose clip. So here we go with a mask. 75% didn't do their straps right. 61% left visible gaps right here. And 61 and 60% didn't do the nose clip thing. Watch this. You want to see how COVID can escape? See my glasses? Now I can't see anything. That just shows you that we think we're Superman once we have the mask on, that we're protected, that all the funk will bounce right off and all of our funk will stay in. Well, as we just found out from this study, it escapes on the sides because we don't have our straps on right. It escapes up here because we don't have the nose clip on right. Hopefully, you can see that my glasses are fogging up. So sometimes it isn't the mask at all. Most of the time, it's us. We're putting on the mask incorrectly. Now, there is one mask that I want to go into now. Pardon me as I put my paper in front of you. It's this one. It's called the N95. You've probably heard about it. This is the most bestest, wonderfulest mask there is. The N95 removes 95% of the 3.3 micron particles. That is fantastic. Isn't that wonderful? And by the way, the N95 masks are regulated by the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. Now, a properly fitted N95 will block 95% of air particles down to 0.3 microns from reaching the wearer's face. And by the way, there is an N97 and there is an N99. Here's the problem, though. That's all incoming. It does zero, what they call source control. N95 does not filter exhaled air passing through the exhaust exhalation valve. I think this is going to, and we're going to get into more about masks. This is now our mask section of the show. What that N95 mask does is 95% of the stuff is filtered through. You're protected from 95%, but it does zero with what's being expelled. So everyone, that person, they could be asymptomatic. They don't know they have COVID. They're clearing their own air, but they are expelling to everybody the virus, and they don't even know it. So, mask efficiency. And here goes another one of my great little, an award-winning television producer. You can tell it was not for graphics. Mask effectiveness. This was done by the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy, University of Minnesota. In short, they found all the cloth mask and materials had near zero efficiency at that 0.3 micron particle size that easily penetrates into the lung. And they did some comparisons. The efficiency for the entire range of particles. A t-shirt has a 10% efficiency rating. Scarves, 10 to 20%. Cloth masks, 10 to 30%, sweatshirts 20 to 40%, and towels 40%. So you're better off with a sweatshirt and a towel over your face than you are with a cloth mask, according to the Center for Infectious Disease Research Policy, University of Minnesota. There was also another study done in, where was it? In Korea, where they found that the N95 mask was 95% efficient. They found that medical masks, that's these. And by the way, these are disposable and only supposed to be worn for a brief period of time, thrown away, new and put on. Medical masks had a 55% efficiency. Cloth masks, 38% efficiency. And handkerchiefs, well, 2%. So there we go. One other study, the effectiveness of face masks in preventing airborne transmission. Again, this came from the CDC in a report called CDC 19 Science Update, released November 10th, 2020. Secondary infection rate. 11 per household contacts, 4 per 100 social contacts, and 5 per 100 work contacts. So those are their words, so let me kind of simplify this. 11% of the contacts that people got sick were in the household. It was 4% with social contacts, 5% with work contacts. once again, the research keeps pointing at where you're going to get sick? At home. Let's see. National Center for Biotechnology Information, which is a division of the National Library of Medicine and the National Institutes of Health. They say an analysis by mask use showed influenza-like illnesses and laboratory-confirmed virus were significantly higher in the cloth mask group compared with the medical mask group. Penetration of cloth masks by particles was almost 97%. With a medical mask, it was less than half of that at 44%. Again, the problem, and I'm guilty of this, is we thought this was our shield, and it hasn't been. And by the way, how often have you cleaned it? Well, I got a bunch of them all over the house. I can't remember which one's what. I can't find them half the time. So I don't know actually when I've washed them all. It's another big problem with self-contamination. Now moving forward, here's a organization that we all know, the World Health Organization. You might be surprised what they have to say. They said the likely disadvantages of the use of masks by healthy people in the general public include potential increased risk of self-contamination due to the manipulation of a face mask and subsequently touching eyes with contaminated hands. Potential self-contamination that can occur if non-medical masks are not changed when wet or soiled. Potential headache or breathing difficulties. Potential development of facial skin lesions. It's called mask mouth. That's what it's called. Difficulty with communicating clearly. Here's the big one. A false sense of security leading to potentially lower adherence to other critical preventative measures such as physical distancing and hand hygiene. So the World Health Organization is warning about face masks. And the biggie, that one of the points that they bring up is, as we saw through that prior study, it's either Singapore or Korea, that we have expelling here, we're not putting on properly here, it's expelling here, and we're adjusting things. Guess what? Hi, good to meet you. I don't want to say we're doing ourselves more harm than good. That's not true, because I'm getting ready to show you a couple of videos from WHO that talk about the proper mask, cloth mask to use. It's a 3-layer mask. Now, I hadn't heard about this until I saw the thing from WHO. Let me see if I can get this racked up for you.
Fabric masks should ideally have 3 layers: an outer layer, an inner layer, and a middle layer, which can be an insert or can be another fabric layer. The inner layer, which comes in direct contact with your face, should be a hydrophilic material, meaning it will easily absorb droplets from your exhaled breath. An example of this material is a cotton. It is important to select a light color such as white, which can help determine when it is soiled or wet. A good place to find this is in a woven or knit cotton t-shirt. The middle layer should go into a pocket between the inner and the outer layer like this, and should act as a filter. This should ideally be a strip of polypropylene fabric, which is a spun-bound, non-woven fabric material. The outermost layer should be a hydrophobic material. This means that the fabric will repel droplets and moisture. This can be made of a synthetic material such as a polyester or a polyester and cotton blend.
All right, let me get out of this. Hang on a second, because I have another one I want to show you. Now, how many of you knew of a 3-layer mask? I didn't. Where basically the innards is the filter part that you can change and clean up, and all of it can be clean. I've only seen this 1 layer, and sometimes even double masking. What they call double masking is not good, because there's no the thing that catches the filtration is not there. Now, here's another video that I want to play you from WHO, which expands upon the mask and the cloth aspect of it that is information we all need to. Well, if I get the right mouse there, let's go on and start that one.
Fabric masks are intended for use in community or public settings where there are COVID-19 cases and where physical distancing cannot be maintained, places such as grocery stores or on public transport. You do not have to wear these if you are not around other people, like if you're driving in your car alone. To be clear, fabric masks are not personal protective equipment, and they are not recommended for use by health workers in healthcare settings, nor for vulnerable populations such as people who are 60 or over, or those with underlying medical conditions. Those individuals should be wearing medical masks. Fabric masks are intended for source control. So imagine you are the source, and the mask is there to protect those around you. Fabric masks act as a barrier between the mouth and nose and the surrounding environment. We still don't know how much protective value fabric masks have for the wearer. That's why, when you wear a mask, you're protecting others, and when others wear the mask, they're protecting you. So remember, the mask should be used as part of a comprehensive package of other infection control measures such as physical distancing, hand hygiene, and respiratory etiquette. Before touching any mask, make sure you perform hand hygiene.
Fascinating.
Either an alcohol-based hand
Now, how many of us
or
thought
water
that a
and
mask
soap.
was the end-all, do-all of everything that we needed? We go out in public. I like that, by the way. Remember, the lady said that when you go out in public, when you're out or by yourself, you don't have to wear a mask. I'm going to give you an example, and really this is just fear. I live along the coast of North Carolina. This was about 3 weeks ago. I was down on the beach. I looked about 2 miles to one side, to the east, not a soul. Looked 2 miles to the west, not a soul. There was one guy on the beach outside of me, so we're looking at least 4 miles of there's now 2 people. I'm off the beach itself directly. I'm at least 100 yards. This one guy who's walking the beach is wearing a mask. He's by himself, and needless to say, he was in a well-ventilated area on the beach. See, that's either misunderstanding completely or just fear, and we got to eliminate fear with fact. And if we take this fact and apply it, then we can better serve ourselves, our family, and our friends. So, where am I now? Lockdowns. Lockdowns. Let's see. I don't have a little graphic for this. The World Bank. And when you're talking about WHO, the World Health Organization, now we're switching over into the World Bank. They say lockdowns implemented to reduce transmission of the novel coronavirus have brought economic activity to a grinding halt in most parts of the world. That's the World Bank. The World Health Organization, they say, let me put their little graphic back up. Let me see if I can find that real quick. There it is. And it would help if I did that over there. Pardon me, folks. Pardon me, folks. Pardon me, folks. There we go. World Health Organization. Listen to what they say. Large-scale physical distancing measures and movement restrictions, often referred to as lockdowns, can slow COVID-19 transmission by limiting contact between people. However, these measures can have a profound negative impact on individuals, communities, and societies by bringing social and economic life to a near stop. Such measures disproportionately affect disadvantaged groups, including people in poverty, migrants, internally displaced people, and refugees who most often live in overcrowded and under-resourced settings and depend on daily labor for subsistence. Another thing, I'll just throw this out to you, that people don't think about. There's a study done in India with lockdowns. They found that domestic violence increased 131% under lockdowns. Now, the World Health Organization just said no to lockdowns. That of the user groups, one is the lower socioeconomic group. They're crippled by it all. So lockdowns is not approved or liked by everybody. And by the way, this is one thing before I forget. This is a pet peeve of mine. If you hear anybody, I don't care if it was Einstein, say the science is settled. Science is always in a state of flux. It has to be. It's always changing. It has to be, or it isn't science. Look at it this way. You know, what if the findings about automobiles in 1920, the science is settled? Well, we're not going to, try anymore. That's it. So now we're driving Model T Fords everywhere. Anybody that says the science is settled either is dumb, really has no clue what they're talking about, or has a purpose or agenda they're trying to put forth. Science cannot be settled. It has to constantly be moving forward, investigating, looking at itself. A lot like repentance. You got to look inside yourself to find the bad stuff so you can get rid of it, so you can improve yourself and move yourself forward to Christ. Well, it's the same thing in science. How about that? I made a Christian science parallel. I thought they were exclusive of each other. No, not at all. Now, this is the one of the things that has scared me, and has scared me, and has scared me. And I've been talking about this for a long time. Actually, since like last March, I was writing blogs about this, the financial aspect of COVID-19, which is now being played into the economic standpoint of the United States of America and our debt and where we're heading screaming towards at 1,000 miles an hour. Take a look at this. This is the financial cost, the COVID-19 pandemic and the $16 trillion virus. This was from the Journal of the American Medical Association, or JAMA. That's what it normally goes by, JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association. Again, this is no slouch organization. They say, and this is republished, again, the CDC republished this. So I can't think of two more justified organizations than the Center for Disease Control and the Journal of the American Medical Association. They say that the SARS-CoV-2 severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2 pandemic is the greatest threat to prosperity and well-being the U.S. has encountered since the Great Depression. Do you get the weight and the gravity as thunder is happening? Thank you, Lord. Of the situation. They're saying this is the greatest threat to prosperity and well-being the U.S. has encountered since the Great Depression. But it gets more. It says this viewpoint aggregates, well, let's get back to the graphic. This viewpoint aggregates mortality, morbidity, mental health conditions, and direct economic losses to estimate the total cost of the pandemic in the U.S. on the optimistic assumption that it will be substantially contained by the fall of 2021. I'll tell you this, I don't know about the coronavirus being contained by fall of 2021. The debt sure ain't. The debt is on this blow-up course, as we're going to get into here real quickly. Since the onset of, and again, this is from the American Journal of the American Medical Association, since the onset of coronavirus disease in 2019, in March, 60 million claims have been filed for unemployment insurance. Before COVID-19, the greatest number of weekly new unemployment insurance claims was 695,000 in 1982. So the greatest claim was 3/4 or 2/3 of a million. Now we're at 60 million. For 20 weeks beginning in late March 2020, new unemployment claims exceeded 1 million per week. As of September 20, new claims have been just below that amount. Now, here is the spooky part, people. People are going to the government for money. Unfortunately, we have a problem. The government ain't got no money. We're already $23, $24 trillion in debt. Now, we just read this thing about a $16 trillion virus. That's over the course of a year. There was $6 or $7 trillion spent by the federal government directly on the coronavirus just in 2020. That's a third of our national debt, which has been going on since ever. $7 trillion actually spent. Now, under the upcoming administration, they're going to want to spend more money. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, showed a short-term and a long-term effect of spending more money. The short-term is that there will be a positive impact of the federal government printing money, pulling it out of the sky, pulling it off the magic money tree, and just giving it out to folks and businesses. There is a short-term benefit to that, but it's short-term, as in 6, 12, maybe 18 months. After that, it's detrimental. Here's why. Here's one of the reasons why. Look at this. If this doesn't shock you, look real closely there. See where that line is? Where it says pandemic? By next year, we're going to be over 100%. It's around 102, 104% of GDP. Long story short, if you had a business where you made $100,000, but you had to spend $104,000 to make that $100,000, you're at a loss. Well, guess what? That's where we are as a country next year. It then explodes over to the year 2050. This information comes from the Congressional Budget Office. Our debt is now at World War II level. Next year it exceeds it, and from every year after that it gets worse and worse. And the reason why, for instance, the primary deficit. So you know that $7 trillion that we pulled out of the air in 2020 to pay off the coronavirus and businesses and things like that? Well, there's interest that has to be paid on that money. Do you see that light blue, that Carolina blue, kind of turquoise? That is net interest over time. That's one reason why the debt gets so much greater, so much quicker, because of the actual interest on the debt that we created ourselves. Now, healthcare is the most expensive item, with the net interest the second most expensive item that the federal government has to pay for, which kind of dovetails into the whole coronavirus thing with healthcare. Let's see, one more graph I want to put up here. Over the 50-year period, our outlays and our revenues. See our revenues kind of flatline? See our outlays, or what we owe, what we have to pay, escalates. People, so we really have a couple of things that we're having to deal with here. One is the monies that the coronavirus has cost us, $16 trillion overall in just 1 year. We actually spent out of pocket, the federal government, $7 trillion. I actually printed it out of thin air. The state of the economy is on the cliff. Well, depending on how you look at it. By next year, our GDP at 104%, we're in debt, and it's going to escalate from there. So any time somebody thinks that the government is going to bail them out, that there's going to be a coronavirus check, so I stay at home, my business will be supported, the government doesn't have money. What happens when the government doesn't have any money and collapses? What are you going to do then? There is no health care. There is no food. There is no home. There is no job. There is no nothing. So please, I beg of you, as we transition into a new administration, be very aware anytime somebody starts talking about giving money away. It is a very dangerous proposition. Unfortunately, with a new administration coming in, they are planning on spending trillions of dollars to help the economy. It's a crash and burn course. Folks, I've been talking for an hour straight. Hopefully this has been very helpful to you. I do want you to jot down that address, P.O. Box 1012, Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, 28512. Don't worry about the telephone number. It's only open during the live presentation. Write to me, Bill Hitchcock, P.O. Box 1012, Atlantic Beach, North Carolina. I'd love to hear from you. We will be doing some more programs here shortly. Again, this was originated live. If you're watching this, thank you. But if you're watching this in December or in January, we ain't live right then. But let me get some more feedback to you that what we'll be doing here in the near future is we'll be doing more programs such as this. I do want to hear from you, what you want to hear, what you want to talk about, because this is kind of a, we'll call it a open mic type of situation. The chat room was open, telephone lines was open. We're going to keep these things open and let you come to us, talk to us, and let us know what you want to talk about, because that's really what it's all about. An hour went by. Go to BillHitchcockLive.com. Everything that I talked about and more, that I was reading off of my cheat sheets here, is there with all of the sources and all of the Euro links to all of those sources, so you can double check what I just said and explore even further. That's it for me today, folks. This is Bill Hitchcock for Bill Hitchcock Live. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you